What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Torque Spec Garage. Got another how-to video lined up for you today. This is kind of like my thing, so you guys will, if you guys ever need help with Toyota stuff, don't worry, you're at the right place. So today we're going to be showing you how to replace an alternator on a 2014 Toyota Camry. I'll figure out which all years this applies for. I think it's pretty much similar through all the years of the Camry. I've done it on a 2011, an 05, and it's all been the same kind of procedure. But I'll get over here, and you guys have seen the car before. It's the same Camry from my oil change video. It's my buddy's son's alternator's making a real awful like grinding sound. So once we get over here, I'll show you guys how to get that swapped out. All right, guys, so here's the car again. Like I said, you recognize it from the oil change video. So we'll get right into this. First things first, whenever you're doing an alternator, you want to disconnect your negative battery terminal. It's a 10 millimeter. So all you do is grab you a 10 mil. Lefty loosey, pull that off. Just make sure it doesn't touch anything. All right, guys, the alternator on this car is located right here beside the heat shield. So first things first, there's one plug right here. There's a clip to the front side of it. So just push that in, and then you just pull that off. And then there's one 10 millimeter, that's the ground on the alternator. And then you have two 14s that hold the alternator on, and a 10 millimeter to take the tension off of the belt. So you have 87 foot-pounds on the ground bolt. So yeah, guys, that nut just comes off. Then that just pulls right off. All right, guys, so your tensioner is right here. So what you want to do is just turn it to the right, and that'll take your tension off of your serpentine belt. See, belt comes up. Just slide it off that top pulley. Like that, and it can just sit right there on the side, let the tension back off. And then all we got to do now is take the two 14 millimeter bolts out, and the alternator should pull right out. All right, guys, so like I said, there's this first 14 right here on the top. So get that broke loose, and the alternator bolts are pretty long, so don't feel bad if you're sitting here spinning for a minute. They are pretty deep, and the bottom one's a little more aggravating than the top one. All right, guys, so like I said, these are very long bolts. This is that top bolt. Just for reference, there it is by my hand. So like I said, it is a very long bolt, so it does take a minute to back it all the way out, and the bottom one's the exact same. It's probably broke, but a lot easier with power tools. The bottom bolt comes out, and now theoretically the alternator should just pull right out of here. All right, guys, so the alternator's loose. Don't forget, we didn't see it, so we didn't do this first. There's a 10 millimeter bolt that holds the harness to the alternator, so make sure you take that off so you can just move the harness out of the way, and then the alternator will just pull right out. Lefty loosey. For my next trick,
yeah, I'm gonna say
I'm gonna break this harness.
Yeah, the clearance.
All right, guys, like I said, that just pulls out, and then that harness just moves right out of the way. Try not to drop your bolt. All right, guys, so we just stuck a pry bar between this bracket and here, and just put a little bit of pressure, and the alternator popped free from the little mounting spot. So then just be careful not to get it all caught up in your harness and everything, and it just pulls right out. All right, guys, so this quickly turned into how to replace the alternator to how to replace the water pump. So we thought the alternator was making a crazy noise, which it did sound like, but it makes sense because the water pump is right underneath it. And you can see this pulley has a lot of slop in it, so this is now going to be, I mean, same process to remove your alternator and put it back in, but now we're gonna throw in how to do the water pump as well. So first things first, we're gonna get this tensioner off. There's a 12mm bolt right in the middle. So we're gonna pull that out, and then that should give us the room we need to pull the water pump off.
It's spring loaded, so it's gonna smash the fuck out of my fingers and spin around and get out of.
Ka-ching-pow! Ping!
Yeah, it's got a locating pin at the top there, it looks like.
Yeah, that's why I said it's kind of hard. We can't put it back on wrong. I mean, we probably could, but...
Never underestimate, baby.
All right, guys, next you want to break this 10mm bolt loose that holds this little bracket on. So I've already broke it loose. Alright guys, then everything else is 12mm bolts. I believe there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I think there's 2 underneath, so 8 total 12mm. So being we didn't know it was the water pump at first, we did not lift the car and drain the radiator first. So we are just gonna get a pan under here and just pull it off and let all the coolant drain when we get it off.
A little pumpy.
All right, guys, so we are going to go ahead and get the car up off the ground so we can get the catch pan underneath to have something to drain the coolant in so we don't just spill it all on the driveway. All right, guys, so there's 6 total water pump bolts. There's 4 up top and then 2 kind of hidden.
Okay,
one goes right here, and then one's right here on the other side on the bottom. I know it's a bad view, but I already got all 6 of them out. So then there's a little ear right here you can just pry behind, and the water pump should pop right off. All right, guys, so I misinformed you. There's actually 7 bolts, not 8. There was one on the very bottom right here that you can't see because the pulley covers it. So just make sure you get all 7 out before you start prying on it. And this is what the old pump looks like. So yeah, but just double check and make sure you get every bolt out before you start trying to pry it off. And then you can get a razor blade if your gasket was all gunky and just clean up the sealing surface so the new gasket sits flush and doesn't leak or anything. And we're gonna run to the parts store and grab a new water pump. All right, guys, so we got our new water pump from the auto parts store. This is an Import Direct brand. Comes with the pump, new gasket. So we'll get this put on here. All right, guys, and to keep your new gasket in place whenever you're trying to install the new water pump, you can just go ahead and stick the top 2 bolts through, and then the gasket will just rest on there while you start the top 2 bolts, and then it should stay in line whenever you put the rest of the bolts in. All right, guys, so we got the new water pump in. I got everything just finger tight for now. The torque spec on the water pump bolts is 9 Newton meters or 80 inch-pounds. So not a ton at all. And like I said, remember that you get all 7 bolts in. Yeah, it just slides right in. There's nothing special that I didn't show. Just make sure you don't drop the bolts or anything. All right, guys, like I said, we got our torque wrench. We got it set to 9 Newton meters. And that's all it takes. So now we just got to do that 7 more times.
All right, so.
All right, guys, so we got them all torqued down to 9 Newton meters. Next thing you want to do is take the 10mm bolt and put it back in this right here. It goes right here. to hold the little bracket that holds the harness. All right, guys, so like I said, we got it put back in. Just make sure you put it in the right way. The little locating tab goes down towards the bottom. Don't got to crank it down there too much. Like I said, it's just a support bracket for the harness. So next, we got to put the tensioner back on. Then we put the alternator back on. Then we dump some coolant in it, and hopefully it doesn't leak.
Neighborhood, and I told him.
All right, guys, so the torque spec on the tensioner pulley is 15 foot-pounds or 20 Newton meters. So you can hear we got that torque back down, back on there. So next we got to put the alternator back on, and then we put the serpentine belt back on. Shoo, we're getting there. Alright guys, and we're just using a little tiny bit of persuasion to get the alternator line back up. So next we're just going to put the 2 bolts back in. We'll hook the ground back up. And then it's time to put coolant back in this thing. Alright guys, so yeah, we got both bolts back in. So now we just got to hook up all the connectors. There's this one. This plugs back in. Then we just got to put the ground back on. Yeah.
Did you crank it tight? The front
No,
one?
it's snugged in there. This freaking AC lines. A mug for videoing. Alright guys, so just make sure you spray off all your pulleys to get all the coolant and stuff off of them, so the belt's not riding on coolant. Alright guys, so we got our serpentine belt back on. I don't know why, but that was the hardest part of this whole thing, was getting the serpentine belt back on. That was insane. Anyway, just make sure you double check the routing of your belt. And then we're getting the alternator hooked back up. Whew. Alright guys, so we got our ground hooked back up, our cable plugged back in, we got this connector plugged back in, we got our bracket back on, serpentine belts on, we have our battery negative terminal hooked back up. So we're going to get the funnel to hook on to the radiator to fill it and burp it. And then that'll be it. All right, guys, we got our funnel hooked up to the radiator. Putting the Toyota red in it. Our Toyota pinky. This little funnel's so cool. Alright guys, so all the air burped out of the system, and we've been driving around now probably like 15 minutes. She's dead center in the temp gauge, not overheating, so I'd say that's a successful job. We checked for leaks, nothing was leaking, made sure the alternator was charging. So that's going to do it for this video, guys. If this helped you, don't forget to leave a like and a comment. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments and I'll try to help you the best I can. I apologize that this video is kind of all over the place, because originally we thought it was the alternator and it wound up being the water pump. So this is just going to be a how to do the alternator and water pump video. So appreciate you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Later.